Welcome back to another episode of Sarkis Unlocked. Today, I have the great pleasure of welcoming someone who doesn't just play the game, he builds the arenas. Steve Pagliuca has spent years dedicating his time to operating and building businesses at a whole nother level. Steve, welcome to the episode of Sarkis Unlocked. We're very lucky to have you. For those who don't know Steve, you'll get to know him today. And if you're watching this, please make sure you are taking notes because we have the great pleasure of having him with us today. So Steve, you know, all the accolades and accomplishments, maybe what people think of you when they see you, your name, and the value it has in Boston, in Massachusetts, across the world. But what I've been able to see firsthand is that your success isn't about the numbers. It's about your specific way of seeing the world and the people around you. Tell me a little bit about where it all started for you before the titles, before the billions, when you were just at KPMG in the Netherlands, which were boring days, I'm assuming, compared to what life is like today.
Well, I think it probably started way before that.
Please tell us.
Because
I know nothing about Steve before meeting you at a Celtics game.
Yep. My grandfather came from Italy, and my grandmother came from Italy, a small town named Morlicano. It's southern Italy, 2 hours from Naples inside, a very small town. And they immigrated through Ellis Island, and he made $8 a week working in a shoe factory for about 40 years. I still have a picture of him in my office, kind of with a shoe in his hand. It's a fantastic looking shoe. Actually, the styles come back with the ones with the little silver spikes on them.
Wow.
That was probably 1932 or something like that. But
And what part of Italy was this?
he worked in the Bronx as a shoemaker.
In the Bronx, coming from Italy.
Coming from Italy, yes. And that kind of, probably dictated my entire life because my father and grandfather always thought the next depression was just around the corner because they'd lived through the depression. So the reason I was in Holland is when I went to college, they said you have to major in law or accounting because those are the only people employed in the depression, and you got to get ready for the depression to feed your family. So I majored in accounting. I didn't really want to major in accounting, but I majored in accounting. And that led to my chagrin. I found out my senior year, I just thought I had to pass a test to get the CPA. But it turns out you have to pass a test and then work 3 years for an accounting firm. So I was like, oh my God, I didn't want to work for an accounting firm. But I applied to eight firms. I think I got 7 offers. And then I had the idea of, well, if I'm going to do accounting, I'd like to learn something about another place. So I called the 7 firms back that made me an offer and said, whoever sends me someplace overseas, I'll take that job. And then back in that day, no one wanted to send somebody 22 with no experience overseas, but one firm wanted me. So they said, sure, we'll send you to the Netherlands to start out. So I jumped on a plane and I landed in this green, wet place.
That's funny. That story relates to my brother. Manny graduating. PwC sent my brother to Florence. And Manny worked at PwC until he realized he did not want to do that for a very long time.
But I loved Holland. I loved working at the places. I was supposed to come back from the U.S. I kind of never really did.
How long did you stay in the Netherlands for?
3 years, about 3 years. I came back for like 6 months, but I was 3 years in the Netherlands working for Piet Marwick, now called KPMG. And it was a small office, and it was doing really well. And so I bought a secondhand Volkswagen Beetle. It's called Keva in Dutch. Keva means beetle. And so I drove that around the country doing taxes and auditing for big companies. So I've been to every inch of Holland. I've been to Arnhem, been to Stellenbosch, been to Amsterdam, and I lived in The Hague. I lived in The Hague on the beach, which was fantastic.
How nice was your place when you were living in the Netherlands?
It was 700 square feet.
700 square feet. School.
And I had a roommate.
School. Duke. Correct? Undergrad
Duke,
was
yes.
at Duke. Was that where your love for basketball started, or like?
Well, no, I played basketball since I've been 4 or 5 years old, and football as well. And back in the day, it's very different today. When we applied to college, I never went to see any colleges. We didn't have the money to do that. So I just had some brochures, and I liked Duke, I liked Princeton, Yale. So I applied to these schools, and I got a great letter from Duke, and UVA was another one. And I was going to play football, and I chose Duke, oddly enough, because it had a great reputation, but I figured it was nice and warm down there. So wasn't a very sophisticated choice to choose it on weather, but I chose the weather. It turns out it was a great choice, and Duke's was and is a great university.
Did you go to all the basketball games when you were there?
Well, actually, I was going to play football, so I got down there early, and I was working out and training with the basketball team, and I was covering the Star, and they liked what I was doing, so they said, why don't you play basketball instead of football? So I played basketball there for 2 years.
You played basketball for 2 years. Who was your coach?
Well, I was the worst player in the worst Duke team that we've ever had, so they had 3 coaches in the next 3 years. So
oh, wow.
We were probably the only team that was 500 in the history of Duke. But I got to play on the freshman team and had a great time for a couple of years, and then I hurt my ankle. So I figured the only way I'd be in the NBA was to buy a team. I wasn't going to make it as a player, so I got the accounting degree. So but it was fantastic. The sitting on the bench in Cameron Indoor Stadium, and it's just a way of life down there.
So do you hate UNC?
Well, I was on the 2 Duke teams, probably the greatest loss in Duke history. We were ahead by 7 points with 17 seconds to go, and we had the ball at Carolina, and we ended up losing the game. Almost impossible. No 3-point shot then.
Huh. You were up by 7 with 17 seconds to go.
And we had the ball in our own basket.
How does that happen?
Well, the center threw the ball and it went into the backboard, so no time went off, and then they threw it in and scored. So then there was 15 seconds left, and then we threw it into our best foul shooter, Pete Kramer, sweet Pete Kramer, and he missed the end front end of 1-on-1, so they score again. Now it's 3, and there's like 9 seconds left. Threw it in again. I think we made one out of the 2. They scored, and then fouled again, and then they got the ball with 3 seconds left and threw it to Walter Davis, and he went 3 feet over half court, shot it, banked in. And that tied the game, and we lost in overtime. If you go on the internet, you can kind of see I had an afro about this large. You can see me sitting behind the bench.
We got to all find that game, and we have to watch it.
I saw it. It's on YouTube because they always mention it as when the commentators say, "Oh, they can come back. There's only 17 seconds. They can come back. Remember Duke." They used to show it all the time. They
always say, remember Duke.
Yeah, they used to show it all the time because it's really one of the greatest collapses in basketball history.
Duke also had a bad collapse this year, but that was simply inbound.
But not like that, 17 seconds.
17 seconds.
7-point lead.
So you're at KPMG. You're living in a 700 square foot apartment. You're driving a beat up Volkswagen Cava. And you're driving across the country handling accounts, big accounts for, they're helping them with their books and accounting. And then where did the transition go from KPMG? Was it KPMG to Bain?
No, I applied for, I actually applied for doctoral programs. I was going to be an economics teacher, so I was trying to get a doctorate in economics. And I got into Columbia with a scholarship, and I got into Harvard and no scholarship though. And I decided to go to Harvard, but then I didn't have a scholarship, so I didn't have money. So after the first year, I got a job. I just looked down the list. What was the highest paying job at the time for summer? It was Bain. Bain & Company was a fairly new company, and so I didn't really know what they did, but they ended up hiring me, and then
they paid for school for you.
Well, at the end of summer, they said we'd like you to join full time, and we'll pay for your school, but just get the MBA and come to us, and in 3 years you can go back and get your doctorate, and that was like 40 years ago now. So I never went back and got the doctorate. Bill Bain's not alive now, but I guess I could go back and say, they're going to pay for me if I want to get an economics degree.
You're not going anywhere. What's the one thing? So that's an impressive journey, especially that you chose Harvard, which essentially, if you chose Columbia in the scholarship, you might have not went to Bain, and that might have not opened up the doors.
For sure.
That it opened up.
A lot of serendipity in life.
A lot of serendipity in life. Now, what's one thing you would tell a 25-year-old entrepreneur that they definitely don't want to hear? I mean, it's just a different generation now, but like you're around, you have grandkids now.
Probably something that that you're good at is that being successful is more like 60% kind of hard work, turning over every stone, going the extra mile, and 40% skills and inspiration and kind of your how good you are. So it's really 60% showing up and going the extra mile in anything that you do.
Completely agree with that. Now, I know you and I went to a Celtics game a couple weeks ago, a month ago or so, and you...
I think back an example of that is when I first started at Bain, they wanted, and this is how I got into private equity. My boss had started a private equity consulting arm, kind of the first consulting firm to help consult the private equity firms. And David Bonnerman was at a place called Acadia, which later became TPG. And I remember trying to sell them a consulting study, and I could never get this executive. And I was nice to his secretary, and I said, well, where's he going this week? And he was going from New York to Houston. So I said, oh, geez, I'm on that same plane. I really wasn't. But I booked the seat next to him. And I was able to corner him for 3 hours. And then he thought I was going to Houston, so it was funny.
I can't see you doing this.
Because we got off the plane and he headed out, and I said, bye, I got to go the other way. And I turned around and I caught the same plane back to Boston. But I got 3 hours with him and then ended up selling him a consulting study that was very successful.
You know what you call that secretary? The gatekeeper.
The gatekeeper, yeah.
It's all about getting in touch and finding the gatekeeper, which a lot of people don't do. I've done it plenty of times. I've been told to shut up, and people have simply walked away from me. But the fact that you did that, not many people do that, Steve. Like that, not many people would do that. You know why, though? They're afraid to get turned down. They're afraid of rejection. And what did you have to lose?
Yeah, well, no, it was pretty natural, and then this was good for him because he's such a busy guy. I was able to, do the whole thing in the plane.
He's just sitting there. He didn't have to go anywhere.
He was just right here.
That's crazy. So pivoting, obviously I've met you through the Celtics, seeing you at games. Even, you invited me to the game a couple weeks ago, and you had started to mention, really your love or not love, but just like your involvement in biotech. Like, talk to us about, what you're doing right now in biotech, why it's interesting to you. Should people invest in biotech? Is it a, industry that, because it slowed down a little bit, I believe. Biotech, I know lab space was struggling a little bit in Boston.
Yep.
What is your involvement, with biotech and what are you doing?
That again goes way back when I ended up joining Bain. One of the good decisions I made, what I advise people today to do is, I said to them, I'll come to Bain, but one condition, I want to work in growth industries. So those industries that I'm comfortable with would be healthcare, because I thought it would grow for the next 20 years, and also tech. So I've been doing healthcare and tech investing for the last 40 years, basically. So biotech was a natural evolution of the combination of tech, and healthcare. Why do I think biotech is interesting? We're at an incredible moment of time right now. If you remember, I think 10 or so years ago, they mapped the genome. I think it cost $1 billion to map the genome. Now you can get a genetic printout for $50, but it cost $1 billion to build that, to do that analysis. So now we have the entire human genome mapped. We now have supercomputers and data centers, and we have artificial intelligence. So that's kind of a perfect storm for finding drugs faster, cheaper, better, and really helpful to biotech, and you're already seeing some examples of that today.
And you've even mentioned some of these drugs to me that are not even FDA approved.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know about them now. Some people don't even know about them. And
now it's a risky game. You can't just do one biotech investment. That's why we're doing a portfolio, and we have a group of experts at PAGS Group looking at this. A fantastic leadership there. And
so PAGS Group is also investing in these biotech.
Yes, I segued from Bain Capital to PAGS Group.
PAGS Group.
We do earlier stages in Bain, and we do things with Bain. We don't compete with them. Bain has an amazing biotech practice led by Adam Koppel, and so we talk all the time. But again, back to that original point is, if you go into something that's growing, like tech or biotech, healthcare, that's going to sustain your career, because it's a lot easier to succeed, when the tide is coming in than going out. So I didn't want to really work for steel companies or for old school companies. So it's been a fantastic run. I've been in tech from the very beginning.
And do you believe that if Steve Pagliuca ended up staying in Chapel Hill or staying in North Carolina and working there, that your involvement in biotech and the medical industry and healthcare would have been as strong? Or do you think Boston and the foundation it had something to do with that?
I would give the full credit to Bain and Company.
Okay.
My bosses, Mitt Romney, Bill Bain, a guy named Harry Strachan. I was very fortunate. That's the other thing I'd advise people is really take a job in a growth area, but then try to work for somebody who's a great boss. And so I was very lucky to get two of the best mentors, a guy named Mike D'Amato and Harry Strachan, both still alive today, both I still talk to, 40 years later. and I wouldn't really, I was off the turnip truck. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing when I came in there. So they basically taught me the latest and greatest of business analysis.
Were they tough leaders?
No, they were actually very supportive, positive, kind leaders. They would suffer mistakes and skills, and again, I remember when I first came in there, I had to give like an end of summer presentation to partners. And back then, you used to do things that were called acetates. You don't even know what acetate is.
What is an acetate?
It's like a plastic piece of paper that you put on a screen and then it projects.
Oh, okay, yeah. We had those in school. Yeah, we had those in school. Yeah.
Yeah.
You write with the marker.
Everything was done with an acetate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you write with the marker and then you erase it.
I gave my last.
That was called something else. What was that called? Forget what it was
called.
It's like
an overhead projector.
Yeah. 100%. Yep.
So you separate it from the paper, you put it on, you talk about the slide, and then you go to the next slide and the next slide. And they used to make them. We used to, as a Harvard MBA, my first job was like cutting the plastic like an orange color for the graph and then putting it in there. You have to build these graphs yourself on plastic. It would take like a day to build the entire presentation. And I remember the last one, it's hilarious, and it's on a screen, right? So I got so excited about the growth of this company. I said, here's the sales growth, and I wanted to point it out. So I took the marker, and instead of doing it on the acetate, I did it on the screen. And then I'm like, oh my God, there's a big black mark on the screen. So then I started erasing, then it got blacker and bigger. And so everybody had a good laugh, but they still hired me.
And that was the end of the summer. That was the end of the summer.
That was the last thing I did there.
So you could have really messed that up and really not got hired.
Yeah, I think they got a good kick out of it.
That's good.
I never did that again after that.
So what would you say throughout your career at Bain, there's going to be a loss that you remember, a mistake you made, aside from that little mistake that clearly didn't really make a difference, but like a mistake, an investment, and a piece of advice, something you just truly messed up on that you could look back today?
Yeah, I would say there was a very interesting situation where we had a new associate. I was leading the case team. I think I was called the manager at that point. I wasn't a partner yet. And we had a client out in Natick, a software company. And so we had him working out there. And, I got a call from the CFO saying, hey, what's this guy doing here? He, blah, 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 kind of a crusty call. And so I was taught, okay, we got to make the client happy. So I kind of took his word for it, and I shifted the individual off to another case because I thought, okay, he's starting off on the wrong foot. Whatever happened, happened. I don't know why this guy was angry. And I later learned that the guy at the company was a real jerk, and my guy hadn't done anything. And about 5 years later, I was in kind of a, Bain used to have these personal development seminars, and I was sitting next to the guy, and they asked, what's the story if something went wrong? And he said, well, I did this thing, I didn't think I did anything wrong, and it kind of devastated me for my first 2 years at Bain. And I said, well, that was me. And I thought, okay, the client's not always right, and I should have stood up for the guy. He's now become one of my best friends.
That happened to be on a much smaller scale with an agent of mine, where this is one of my very, very best agents, and someone had called me and said, I'm not interested in keeping you on this project, it's a development project, if so-and-so is going to stay on. And I said, well, I'm actually calling you because, I heard that you were very disrespectful to this person, and they've done nothing but work their ass off, and the results have been there. And if you don't want them, then I'm not interested in staying on this project, because I had to have her back because I simply knew she didn't do anything wrong. And I think that's very important in being a leader today.
Yeah, so you did the right thing. I did the wrong thing there. And I kind of...
But the reason why I do the wrong thing, I did the right thing, is because I've been able to surround myself with people like you. And I've heard stories like this from a lot of successful business owners and entrepreneurs, because the way of leading back then, in my opinion, it was easier to lead back then, Steve.
Yeah.
Now you have so many different, now if an employee is sick or needs a mental health day, you got to bring them chicken soup to the house. But I know that you, the Bags group, Judy and yourself, we can't forget about Judy. Obviously, Steve would not be the man he is if it wasn't for Judy. So shout out Judy whenever you watch this. You're definitely we'll talk about that later. But I know that you guys had built a 15,000 square foot lab, I believe, at Harvard.
Yes. It's called the Life Lab, and that came about because my daughter-in-law was a postdoc at Harvard after coming from the Marshall Scholar in London in biotech, and she was working on having stem cells turn into pancreatic cells to cure type 1 diabetes, and she was going to a new company and they couldn't find space, and so I said, that shouldn't be. We should build some lab space at Harvard. I mean, Dean Nittenoria probably had the idea, and we talked about it, and so I think immediately we signed up and said, let's build a building, and then any student at Harvard, affiliated with Harvard, if they want to do a startup, they apply to kind of an evaluative board. If it's a good idea, you can get cheap space right on campus and go to your classes and then try to start a biotech or tech business inside there.
And why was that important to you and Judy? Like you wanting, aside from...
The funny thing is we first got involved because it would have been great for my daughter-in-law, to be able to, be at Harvard and be working, having the lab right there.
But you didn't need to build 15,000 square feet for that.
No, but then we thought, okay, this is a great idea for everybody, for Harvard,
Yeah.
for Boston. I had written an editorial, I think, in 2009 in the Globe that said, we shouldn't repeat the mistakes of the past, because in 2009, we could have lost the biotech industry because of tax issues, because the government wasn't supporting it. And Deval Patrick came in, and I wrote an editorial in support of Deval Patrick to say we should invest $2 billion from the government into really helping biotech. And so this was putting my money where my mouth was, to say, okay, let's build this lab space. And I think already in the 6 or 7 years this has been operational, there's been at least 60 businesses formed. I think $500 million of capital has taken those businesses out of there. So it's been very successful, been so successful, they called me 3 years ago and said, another donor wants to donate the same thing on the other side of campus, the medical school. And are you comfortable with that? I said, of course I am. I'm glad that spurred that. So now they have 2 of them.
That's awesome. That's great. And that's definitely probably being used the way it should be. And
I really have to applaud Harvard and Nittenoria, because normally at a university, it takes 5 years to go from an idea to getting a building up. And this thing literally was probably 18 months to 2 years from the idea to actually having it up. And they built the lab down in sections, down in a factory in Pennsylvania, in the country, I think the Amish country in Pennsylvania.
so it was modular?
Yeah, and modular, and then they had 7 trucks come up, and then all of a sudden, they just put it on the foundation, it was done. And it still looks great today. It has lots of light, great place to work.
Now, shifting gears a little bit to the Celtics and your time with the Boston Celtics and as a sports owner. I remember you and I had spoke about being an owner, and I asked a lot of questions back in the day. Now, how much of being an owner of a sports team? You're still currently an owner of a soccer team in Italy, but being in Boston, being part of Bain Capital at the time, starting your own family office, how much do you think being an owner of a sports team, and a majority owner like you were of the Celtics, really helped you take it from a couple $100 million to $1 billion or whatever that trajectory was?
Yeah, I was actually the co-owner, and I give a lot of credit to the Grossbeck family and
Yep.
the group we put together, and a huge amount of credit to a guy like Danny Ainge, who I was able to talk into coming to the team. But I had been a Celtics fan, forever. I remember
Your whole life.
Yeah, it's funny. I lived between Boston and New York my whole life, and so I was one of the few people that liked New York teams and Boston teams. So, and the Celtics won a lot more in those days. The Knicks won in I think '67 with that famous game, but the Celtics won a lot more. So I followed the Celtics with Bill Russell and M. Bryant.
So you were also a Knicks fan at the same time you were a Celtics fan?
Yeah, I was.
Let's make sure we don't put that one on blast. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I truly was, and I was a Jets fan and Patriots fan.
Well, you never won if you were a Jets fan.
Yeah. Well, Joe Namath back then.
Joe Namath, yeah.
I remember betting on the Jets. I was in high school, and I made money on that because the spread was so big, and they ended up winning. But no, the Celtics was a fantastic experience, and just like Bain Capital, taking the long-term approach. What I'm most proud about in my tenure at the Celtics was that we basically have the same management team there for 23 years, even as of today. The fantastic management team, Rich Gotham, Sully, all the guys, Reichfelder, Ted Dalton, they've been there for years. And the same thing on the basketball side. We never really, except initially when we came in, our first full-time coach was Doc Rivers. He was there for 9 years, and then he left us. We didn't fire him, so we never had to, because we believed in continuity. And if someone was good, you don't blame the coach for the losses. You try to get better players.
Better players.
So we knew Doc was a great coach, and
which is not really the way it is these days.
He's now going to be inducted in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if you know, but he's going to be inducted in the Hall of Fame in this August. So he stayed with us 9 years, and then we brought in Brad Stevens, who had a long tenure as well. And then when Danny Ainge decided to retire, Brad moved up to Danny's position, and then we brought in Joe Mazzulla. So we've had incredible continuity, incredible people. And when you have good people, if you support them and you have that continuity, you win.
100%. And you have to have good systems around those people. And now, but like, let me ask you this, like, you building that, like, so the success of the Celtics, 100%, that's exactly how it happened in your business, your experience in business and building and understanding how to grow a company definitely helped that. But now let me ask you this. You being in the seat you were in, being on the floor, being, if not the biggest, one of the biggest names in the franchise, it was you and Wick. Did that open up any more doors for you to grow? Like, was that investment, because you weren't making a lot of money. I know you don't make a lot of money as an owner. Some years you lose money as an owner. But did it open up any doors for you to expand, your business, your family office, more investors over the years?
I think it was very helpful.
Do you understand the question?
Yes, absolutely. From a business context, it's very helpful.
Business contacts, yes.
More global contacts.
Yep.
And that led to meeting folks in Atalanta at the football team. I don't think I would have met them if it weren't for the Celtics, because they wanted to know how successful we were. And then we got in discussion in Italy, and then they wanted investment from us. They wanted to be like the Celtics, and they're a fantastic family. And so we did a joint venture with them with the soccer team. So yeah, it was definitely. But I didn't really join for that reason. I was just a basketball nut. I'm a gym rat basically, and so. At the time, the Celtics were losing a lot of money, and they lost money, a lot of money for the first 2 or 3 years. We had a great ownership group that supported that because they believed in the plan, and the plan was to try to win a championship in 5 years. It had 3 elements. The first thing we were trying to do is create a better fan experience. The second thing was build a championship team. The third thing was to really turbocharge the community effort. So I helped found the Boston Celtics Shamrock Foundation, which became one of the most successful.
It's the biggest gala of the year.
Yeah, in probably the country, and that continues. It's a great thing today under the new leadership. So that's what we set out to do, and we never really thought about money. We wanted to bring back that championship because the Patriots won so many, the Celtics won so many, but it was 16 years we hadn't won.
Yeah, I mean, you guys went through the days of, like, I remember Vitali Potapico. You guys had, J.R. Bremer and Rodney Rogers. Like, those years were tough years. Like
Ricky Davis. How about Ricky Davis?
Ricky Davis winning the dunk contest, I think. Yeah. But that's all. He would have 51 game and then have 5 the other.
That was Gerald Green that won the dunk contest, I think.
Gerald Green, yes.
Yeah, Ricky Davis did like a dunk when he was in Miami.
And then he ended up going to the Cavaliers, I believe. Ricky Davis. He went to the Cavs after. Played with LeBron. So Delonte West at one point.
Yeah, Delonte West and Tony Allen.
Tony Allen, yep. That was a fun team.
But the real guy that really helped us was Paul Pierce, because we sat down with him, I think, in the second year, and he said, look, you need to trade me. I want to win. And I said, we're going to win. Wick and I sat down with him and said, we're here committed. We're going to win. You should stay here. This is your place. And we really have a great debt to Paul Pierce, because had he not stayed, we may be still trying to win. He was the cornerstone. He was the guy that helped us attract Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen, kind of the first big 3.
Yep.
And
was that one of the biggest weeks of your life?
Absolutely.
Those 3, because they got you the first championship that you've ever had.
Absolutely. And
2008, crazy.
2008, it was amazing, and Kevin brought in an intensity. Ray brought the shooting, and then we had drafted Rajon Rondo. Danny had a great pick on that. The funny story of Rajon Rondo is, if people think people know this story, we were sitting in the draft room, actually in the locker room, which
played at Kentucky, right?
Which was the draft room. Yes, he did. Which was the draft room that night, and Danny came to us, Wick and I, and said, "Hey, I think this guy should be drafted a lot higher. There's a guy available, I don't know, what is it, 23? We picked him at 16, and we can buy the pick for $1 million. In those days, the NBA owners didn't realize how valuable the picks were, so we paid $1 million. We had to make a decision.
Can you still do that today?
Yeah, you can still do it today. Yeah, you can still do it today.
You can buy a pick?
Yeah, you can buy picks, yeah. So we said, okay, we'll pay $1 million because Danny believed in this player. And we almost didn't have the $1 million. So at that time, that was a kind of a momentous decision between Wick and myself to say, let's spend the $1 million. And I give Wick a lot of credit. He has a lot of belief, and so we freed up the money. And then we wouldn't have won the championship without having Rondo either.
No
Rondo
chance.
Turned out to be, as Danny said, Rondo was probably one of the top 5 point guards in the NBA.
Oh, 100%. His passing skills and the behind the back, sometimes that play.
Yeah.
I was a big fan, Steve. I remember being at my parents' in their basement when I was 9 years old in Dedham, 8-foot ceiling, popcorn ceiling. I used to get so mad because I used to get up for a Wednesday night game when Yeri Welsh, Danny Ainge's number 44, he would be like, he was our star player. He had the wrapper on his hand. And then, the touch Shamond Williams, that number 11 point guard. And then who's the other kid? Marcus Banks.
Yep.
UNLV kid.
Yep.
Like those years were tough years.
They were.
And we lost. And then obviously Ricky Davis, Vin Baker.
Marcus actually started out with a big bang because we used to have the summer league in Dorchester, UMass Dorchester. And our first game in the summer league was playing against LeBron when he first came. It was his first game ever in the NBA in the summer league. And Marcus covered, who's about 6'1", he was covering.
Everyone thought Marcus Banks was going to be like a big deal.
I think he kind of outplayed LeBron in that game, actually.
And then what other player was a bust? Kendrick Brown.
Oh yeah, Kedrick.
Kedrick Brown.
That was before us.
That was before you.
Before us, yeah.
So you guys acquired the team in
2003. They traded Kedrick the year before.
Okay, so you weren't here for the greatest comeback in NBA playoff history against the Nets.
I watched it, but we didn't know the team.
You didn't know the team yet. That was against the New Jersey Nets with Jason Kidd.
Yeah, Paul Pierce was on the table.
Yeah.
Okay, with the towel.
Oh, yeah, yep, that was crazy. Now, let me ask you this. So you're now a owner of a soccer team, which you've won a championship with, I believe, 2024. You had 2 championships, right?
Yeah, within 4 weeks of each other. It was incredible.
Within 4 weeks of each other. But now let me ask you this. I think I know the answer, but 3 titles now as a sports owner, correct?
Yep.
08, 24, 24. Which one's your most memorable one?
I think they're all memorable.
Come on, there's got to be a favorite.
No, it's so hard to win a championship in basketball, NBA, or Serie A, and this was European, so all of Europe, Europa League. It's so hard. You have to enjoy every one of them. Now the first one was amazing because it was new and we hadn't won in 20 years, so that was incredible. But the second one was amazing because it took a long time to get from the first. We thought we'd win quite a few, but we had injuries. The one good thing that Bynum ever did in the NBA was injure Kendrick Perkins.
That was 2010, Game 7.
Game
7.
No, he got injured. I think Game 5, and we played without him Game 6, and then we lost Game 7.
Yeah. 2010.
So it's very.
Yeah, what you did it with two different coaches, 2 different groups of players, and 2 different general managers.
But it was a long time, and it was very. We thought we'd win a bunch with that squad that we had, and we came close. We were in the finals, semifinals almost every year. But coming back and winning it with that new group was great. And then Atalanta, that was very special because I don't think they hadn't won that thing in 100 years or so. And so the whole town, went crazy. You can't walk around the town without seeing an Atalanta sign.
Now,
every baby that's born in Bergamo, Italy, which is right outside of Milan, every baby gets a onesie that says Atalanta on it.
Now let me ask you this, speaking of that. How did you walk into a 100-year-old Italian soccer club and get the locals to trust you? I know that they called you the Italian Ted Lasso.
I think there was something.
Someone, I read that somewhere, but how did you get these guys to this?
Well, the good news is my name's Pagliuca.
Yeah, exactly.
With a silent G. And
you can talk about your father and grandfather
and
shoes coming from Italy.
The second thing is we really partnered with a fantastic family that had been running the team. I wouldn't have done this without this great group that's is the guts of the team. Antonio Percassi was a player. He then worked for Benetton, great business guy, and his son.
Benetton, the clothing line?
Excuse me?
Benetton.
Yeah, Benetton.
The clothing line.
He was a soccer player, and then he had a relationship with the people that own Benetton. And
The United Colors of whatever?
yeah, he helped put up the Benettons in the
Wow,
U.S.
I used to wear that all the time.
And his son, Luca, is a fantastic soccer player and person as well, and business guy. So we partnered with them and injected capital in. And I think we're lucky. I mean, we were very lucky because in the second year, we qualified for Champions League. We won that Europa Cup. So the fans give you a lot of breaks if you spend money. We probably spent record amounts of money for players, and we have a very competitive team right now. So, and we renovated the stadium. So they really have treated us well.
Now, has there ever been any back and forth? Have you ever taken anything or used any of the same people from an NBA team to a soccer team, and how have they helped each other? Vice versa.
Yeah, it definitely.
I mean, two different countries, two different sports.
There's a huge amount of parallels, and the overlap is in, how do you draft, how do you sign the right players? So all the stats analysis, what your strategy should be. So Mike Zarin has been very helpful. Mike Zarin is an investor in the club.
Oh, he is?
And Joe Mazzulla is an investor in the club too. And,
I love that.
I think Brad is, and so
That's awesome.
They all love soccer, and they became investors, and so we've had the management team over to the U.S. both on the business side and the basketball side, and they've taught us some things too as well. I mean, they come back very quickly from knee injuries, so they do a lot of techniques in Italy that brings them back quickly. So there's been learning on both sides, and Joe Mazzulla is a huge soccer fan, and he's Italian as well. So he had a lot of fun with this. He met Gasparini, our first coach.
He's also a crazy fighter and cold punch guy and a lot of other things.
Who's the coach of Manchester United? Pep Guardiola. Pep Guardiola, Manchester City. He's come over and watched the games. He's close to Joe Mazzulla. We had Lookman come over and watch our games. He was our star player at the time. So lots of synergy and great times between the two of those.
Wow. Now, do you think that, I asked you this when you and I were at the game together a couple weeks ago, do you see the sport of soccer becoming bigger than it is today in the U.S.?
I think it's definitely going to get bigger. The issue the U.S. will face is that the pay scale is so much higher in Europe. They've attracted with special deals Messi. Way back when they attracted Pele from Brazil back 30 years ago. By the way, he played in New York. But they're going to have to figure out the wage scale and get a bigger TV contract, and then pay more money to get better players to come here. So. The Premier League is the most watched league. Serie A is right up there with the Premier League because the quality of the players are incredible. MLS has really good quality, but they're paying 5x, 6x, 10x for soccer players in Europe.
Yeah, I feel like that's just because you haven't seen really.
Well, the women's game is taking off here because the women are the best in the world, and they can pay what the other places are paying. So you're now going to see talent from Europe coming over into the women's teams here.
Right now, the women's soccer in the U.S. is bigger than the men's soccer, correct?
I don't know if it's bigger, but it's definitely on a faster trajectory because they're able to get marquee players to come over here. They have a wage scale that they can pay the players, and that's what MLS. I think as MLS grows and people watch it more and the revenues go up, it has a chance, but it's going to take a while.
Now, when you came into owning a sports team, you've never done this before. You were new to it. So when you came in and you saw, this is like for anyone owning a business, anyone buying a business, it's what private equity does. They go in, they acquire businesses, and they, build them up, and they 10x, 20x, 30x. When you bought the Boston Celtics with Wick and you guys assembled a team, how bad was it, Steve, compared to what you saw before? Did you walk in there and open up the hood and were you it's really as bad as I thought it was?
No, I don't think it was bad at all. I think
the systems, the business, you said that you ended up, doing a lot of different things with the community and the fan experience.
Yeah, I don't think it was bad at all. The previous management, were bleeding green and they were trying to win every year. I mean, they tried a lot of things there, and part of this game is luck.
Players and luck.
Luck, and they made some. They had a lot of draft picks, and some worked out, some didn't work out. And
Reggie Lewis, Lenny Bias.
Yeah, there was a whole bunch of kind of unlucky things. We've been lucky for so many years in Boston, and then Lenny Bias. I mean, he could have been the next Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And he never played there. And then Lewis was our star, and then he had the heart issues. I think they did a nice job there. I think all we did was come in, and then if you remember, social media didn't exist then.
Yeah.
But we were fast over social media. Wick was a venture capitalist. I was a venture capitalist. So we brought in social media, more connectivity with fans, a bunch of new ideas that were percolating.
Like, were they doing, like, I remember Kelly Olynyk was obviously, one of my very, very close friends. It was just his birthday, so happy birthday, Kelly. I know he was like one of the leaders in like the charity events and
Kelly,
the appearances. He
Kelly
always went to everything, to the schools, everything. And all that things, like you guys go to the hospitals and you eat the kids and Halloween. Was that something the old ownership group was doing?
They were doing a lot of charity things. I think we ended up, because we had such a fantastic ownership group, a lot of the guys from Bain Capital who were very charitable, we ended up having all the owners chip in millions of dollars to then just turbocharge that effort. So we built on what was there before, and we just turbocharged it. And then
because that's huge. That opens up the doors. That shows that you guys are caring. People like when you care. People like those who actually are not just about business and making money, but giving back. And it really, you guys had that image. And I think seeing that was just, it makes people want to go to games.
Yeah, I think from day one, we appreciate the fan support. We said that we're just stewards of the business. And so we did not do this as an LBO or IRR. We did it to win championships. And so if we did it to make money, we wouldn't have lost money for so many years. You can make money in the NBA. I mean, the Clippers made money for 20 years in a row, but they never got in the playoffs because they had a low payroll and, the TV contracts are big. So our philosophy was, this is a community asset, and if it's a community asset, you got to help the community. And it turns out it was really helpful with our players as well, because our players then adopted that same ethic. So I think we led the league most years in player appearances, beyond the traditional amounts that they do.
What's the award the Celtics used to give out for that player? Because I know the Patriots have the Ron Burton Award.
Yeah,
do you guys have like a
it's kind of charity, kind of community award. The
community award, yeah.
And we've had all the players contributing lots of time, and then it's a flywheel. It's a positive, virtuous circle where they get in the community, then the fans love them, and then the fans come to the games and they play hard and they do more in the community, and they get a lot out of it too. So, and Kelly was definitely a leader in that, and Paul Pierce would go to anywhere where he needed to go, and so our players today and then, are some of the best guys in the NBA for doing that. And I think it pays huge dividends for the community, for the players, and then it translates into winning on the court.
And I know that Judy and you, aside from just your community and charity work with the Celtics, outside of it you guys have done so much. I mean, I know that you guys supported Ron Burton for a long time. You got an award. You guys have been involved. I mean, you've built Harvard, a lab, everything else. How important has it been for you guys to find charities that you wanted to back? And how does it, and what were some of the wins from that? Like that you could, because you can see it. I mean, gratitude is everything. Once you can give back and see results, I mean, how does that make you feel? And do you?
Fantastic. We focused our charitable efforts on improving the lives of children in need.
Yeah.
So I was chairman of the MSPCC, Mass Society for Prevention of Children, for 13 years, probably, I think, maybe the longest tenure, 10 or 13 years. And that's a fantastic organization that's still going strong today. The Boston Celtics Shamrock Foundation, we started Boston Celtics United for Social Justice with our players after the Floyd incident highlighted the need for that. And obviously, Ron Burton, Habitat for Humanity, the NBA Cares, we were able to go down to, with my whole family at different times, to South Africa and build homes with the NBA Cares group. The NBA.
Malcolm Brogdon loved that.
Yeah, the NBA has done a fantastic job with that. Jaylen Brown came down there. Each of my kids has gone down there in different summers to build those homes. So I think it's been a fantastic, two-way street. And it's paid big dividends for Boston, for the players, and for the people. So we've been just happy to be a part of that.
That's awesome. And then obviously your legacy, you and I've met you a long time ago. I was always a pest, just as you got on an airplane to, try to pitch a deal. I would always talk to you about real estate. I've only been in the business for 10 years now. We've developed a very successful business. We have 20 agents, number one real estate team in Massachusetts, as you know.
And that's even before you got the title of WBB.
Yeah, and WBB, what's that stand for?
World's Best Broker?
World's Best Broker. So, you've sold homes in Massachusetts now with me in Weston.
Now transitioning to the Greek Gatsby.
The Greek Gatsby. 29 Webster. And then we just sold your home at 362 Marlborough Street. I know you own homes pretty much across the country. You've had me represent 2 of your properties, and we've worked together, on those properties. What do you look for when you're buying real estate, and what are your thoughts on investing in real estate? We talked about biotech, we've talked about you in private equity, sports teams. When you or the Pags Group look at a multifamily investment, look at a real estate play, is that something you guys are into? How do you look at it?
Yeah, we're into that, and my son Joe and son-in-law Seth kind of run that area, and we made some very successful real estate investments. What we look for is quality properties, ones that we think can get filled up and have growth in growth cities, and then part of this is the cycle. You don't want to buy at the top of the cycle. Mm-hmm. In 2007, 2006. For example, the building we were in sold for $1 billion, I think $1.1 billion or something like that. The John Hancock building sold to Lehman Brothers with 2006 or so, and then
Lehman Brothers went on.
And ended up in 2009. I actually looked at the deal. Some guy bought it for $600 million, so $700 million less than it had gone for a couple of years ago, and now it's worth billion something right now. So I think you got to get quality properties. You have to know what the cycle is, buy at the right time, and then make sure you're well capitalized so you can go through some downturns. But long-term, real estate's proved to be a really good investment.
Yeah, now I tell that all the time. Like I say to people, if you're looking to buy, like developers, because 2021 was my 8-year-old daughter could put a sign out and sell it in 2021, but 2020 to 2022 market was strong. 2023 started going down. And that's where developers got hurt. Construction costs went up. The supply chains, war, everything that was happening. So short term, you are a believer real estate is a risky play for developers trying to get in, get out, but you stand by 10 years plus.
You have to have a long time frame, and then you have to be well capitalized.
Well capitalized.
If you have in a downturn, a rental property is going to lose renters. It's going to your rates are going to go down. They won't go up like you predicted. So you have to have a capital cushion. So all the real estate we've done has been, with the appropriate amount of leverage that we can weather the storm, appropriate amount of equity behind it. Same thing at Bain Capital. We don't over-lever the companies. So we got through our whole portfolio. We got through 2008, pretty much unscathed. We returned close to 2 times the money in a fund that was raised. Invested 2006, 7, 8. Investors got 1.9 or something times their money back.
Yeah, 2008 was a tough year. But
those 3 years before, the prices were very high. So it's a testament to the fact that we had the staying power.
Yeah. No, I agree. And so listen, we've worked together on 2 transactions. Obviously, the first one was a difficult sale. That was your home was on the market for a long time, on and off. We come in. We have 2 offers, I believe, first week or second week. What's the one thing, you've worked with many real estate agents. You've worked with me, you've worked with a number of agents. What's the one thing in me that you saw that actually, made you want to work with me? You're not an easy sell, Steve. It took like a couple months, I think, to get a listing agreement signed from you. But what made you?
I think it comes back to the first question you asked me. It's the kind of the hustle, the persistence, the wheeling dealing you need to do, looking under every stone. And so when you came in, you created a lot more demand. Being creative created a lot more demand for the property. You got to market it better, staged it, had suggestions on how to change it. And fortunately for you, both of those paid off. So we're still using you.
Now the question is, what are we going to sell next?
What have you done for me lately?
Something coming up soon. Well, listen, I really appreciate you coming here. Thanks for everything you've done, and thanks for your mentorship.
Great to be here.
Thanks, Steve.